Hi, everybody. Looks like we're live. Jean Humbrecht with Humbrecht Law, criminal and traffic defense attorney in Manassas, Virginia. Welcome to my weekly local business spotlight. And I have a very special guest and friend to talk about Taboo Talks and Thoughts today. Ladan Madrasahi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And I say that every time I talk to you. Did I get it right?
Pretty close. I don't usually use my last name. So
okay,
no
so welcome Ladan.
There you go.
Founder of Taboo Talks and Thoughts. So I actually spoke on Taboo Talks and Thoughts one time, and it was actually really interesting. What did I talk about that time? Was it speeding tickets?
Yep, your book. Yep, that's really nice.
I'm trying to pull up the description because I can't really do it justice. So I'm going to give a brief description of Taboo Talks and Thoughts, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ladan to tell everybody a little bit more, and then I'm going to share it in my different groups. So throughout our lives, there are times when we would like to discuss certain taboo topics, yet we hesitate to do so. Often, we tend to stay on the sidelines out of fear of judgment. And by suppressing the desire to have deep, real conversations about certain subjects, they become even more taboo, making it even more difficult to break through the cycle. Before starting Taboo Talks and Thoughts, Ladan would often have deep individual discussions with strangers, acquaintances, and friends. In those conversations, they would confide in her that the things that they previously hadn't shared with anyone, and it was deeply humbling. The main idea of Taboo Talks and Thoughts Facebook group is to have a safe space where participants can discuss anything and everything. Almost nothing is off limits, and all group members are encouraged to fully express themselves, no matter how uncomfortable it may initially seem. Oh, Deneen has joined us. Hi, Deneen.
Hi.
So Ladan, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about it. That was a very good description. I did not write it. Ladan did. But if you could tell everybody just a little bit more about it, and then more about why you decided to start that group, and then we'll get into different things that you've discussed in the group.
Yeah, no problem. So thank you so much, Jean. This is my second time on. So excited.
That means you're popular.
Yay, I love it. So right now, the Taboo Talks group is up to about 1,300 members. It started 2 years ago with my just begging my friends to join because one of the events that I do with my event business is I help people with end of life. And so I thought about it, and death and dying is truly one of the most taboo topics. Most people, even though we all have that in common, we're all going to die, most people don't want to talk about it. And so I thought, okay, well, why don't I start these discussions? This was pre-COVID, and they were in person. And then I thought, I want to talk about menopause, and I want to talk about other things. So when I created the calendar for 2020, not knowing that COVID was around the corner, I actually did a lot of market research by asking people and talking to friends on Facebook what kind of taboos they wanted to talk about. And the list was enormous. So when it became apparent that COVID was basically going to make my talks impossible, I decided that the Facebook group could be a mechanism to have the conversations. And at the time, the group was called Taboo Thursday. And it got confusing for people because I was posting outside of Thursdays, and then the talks were scheduled on Thursdays mostly, but then some of my co-hosts could only meet on Wednesday, for example. And then people weren't coming to the group to check the posts unless it was Thursday. So somebody suggested I change it, which I'm really glad I did. And the reason it's Taboo Talks and Thoughts is because a lot of times the taboo topics are just a thought I've had or it's something that's going on in the news. For example, with everything that's happening in the world right now with things in the Ukraine and everything else, I want to be able to have information available and also just have people be able to ask questions. Like it might be, it's not taboo, but I always called it Kiev, always. And the news is now talking about Kyiv. And I got to the point where I'm like, what is happening? Why did they change the pronunciation? So I am going to be posting about that it's actually the Russian pronunciation is Kiev, and Kiev is how they say it in Ukraine. So, but I was, I have a degree in international business, and I was nervous to ask that of someone because I didn't want to look stupid. So it's not necessarily taboo, but it's something you don't bring up because I should know better how it's pronounced, but I found out that no, this is a relatively new thing that the world is supporting Ukrainians by not pronouncing it with the Russian pronunciation. So again, not everything that I talk about on the group or that I don't let people post directly unless I approve the post. They're not always things that are like really, really bad. So they can be talking about taxes, talking about a speeding ticket. I mean, that's why I wanted to have you on because I kept my reckless driving speeding ticket. I kept it a secret for a long time. I didn't want to admit that a working professional with a kid in the car, sometimes I didn't get the ticket when I had a kid in the car, but like, you don't want to admit some of these things. So then they become taboo, especially because it was potentially going to be a misdemeanor, right? So anyway, so things like that. And so I'm open to having co-hosts on with me with the talks to promote what they're working on. I am open to people suggesting, a taboo that I hadn't, thought about. I do a lot of research, I must say, though. And if the FBI ever takes my computer, Jane, I'm going to need a lawyer because they're going to wonder what I am up to. So.
Well, that was a really good description. Janine typed something. Oh, she wondered the same thing about the pronunciation. Yeah, I recently read that too. I've always been pronouncing it Kiev. I didn't know like a couple days ago that it was Kiev. So
yeah. I'm actually now on my the school that I went to for international business. I posted it to that group that I manage, and there are people having a debate about it, saying there are Russian speakers in Ukraine, and it should be okay to still call it Kiev. And then you would never think some of the things that I end up having debates or discussions about would not think that it's something that there could even be two sides, but there always seems to be.
Yeah, and I want to get into that, but I noticed there's more people popping on, and I forgot to say hello. That's how I know that Janine was here because I cannot see that you're on through StreamYard. I only see if you type in the comments. So let me know you're here in the comments, and if you have any questions about the taboo topics or suggestions for taboo topics, feel free to type anything in here. So J.R. Spear, hello.
Oh, hey, JR. How are you? You can't answer back, but maybe.
Well, you can, but there's like a 15-second delay. So you mentioned that some of the conversations you've had in the group are things that you didn't think there would be two sides on. So, like, give us an example.
Not necessarily two sides.
An example before we get into the.
So let me tell you a couple of my favorite things that I've brought up on the group that I just never anticipated such debates or people chiming in. Bathrooms around the world. That was a really fun topic. We were talking about the fact that a lot of the world doesn't have the type of facilities that we do, right? A lot of times it's a latrine or like just a lot of the poor countries don't have it, right? So that conversation was both hilarious and also just a reminder of how lucky we are in the Western world, right? To have, so we were all sharing our stories about like going to a country that uses a squat toilet, and that the conversation just as you can imagine, people really, no matter what age you are, still like talking about going number two. So it was that was really fun. There's two that stand out as the most I guess, impactful, and as far as like really hit me hard, the abortion conversation, and people that have never shared with anyone that they've had an abortion, sharing for the first time. Well, not anyone. But not really talking to their friends and family about it that much. Shared, a few people shared on the site, and the support and the fact that members are not judgmental and that people can actually join in and support, but also just, put a little like that they've read it, and there's nothing else has to be said. I've been told by numerous people that they really feel like this is a community, right? There are a lot of the same people that post now. So we've gotten to know each other. There's been a time where we talked about food insecurity and really uplifted people in the group that were having some hard times with getting food on their own tables. So again, a reminder that you generally just don't talk about your inability to necessarily get 3 meals a day, right? So being able to have a place to go and say that you're struggling, and that, or maybe that you grew up with food insecurity and how that's impacting you now. We've talked about different race issues. So when everything was happening with George Floyd, I had a taboo talk specifically around race and social constructs, and just I sat back and let my members that are Black like actually run the conversation, and it was really impactful. One that really hit home for me was I had a feeling when I accepted one of the group members that potentially he was a little off. And then I accidentally accepted his friend request. And at that point, I was very new to being a group moderator, and I didn't want to unfriend him because I felt like, oh, his feelings will get hurt. But unfortunately, my gut instinct that something was off with this guy was correct, and he went and began looking at all my Facebook posts, and I have 2 girls, and he wrote me, and I won't, get into it, but it is posted on the group, what he was saying. But essentially, he was a pedophile, and I had allowed a pedophile to not only join the group, of course, how would I know, but also befriend me and see pictures of my girls. So when his awful comments, I immediately removed him, reported him to Facebook, and then posted about it on the page. But what I like to do is not just say, here's a topic, I like to educate. So I wrote some additional, I had a lot of support, I'll just say that, from the people in the group writing me saying, you should report him to this. Have you already done this? Like, it was really nice. And then they made me feel better about the fact that I allowed him into my personal page. And actually speaking about it made me really grow from it, so that in the future, I am more careful with who I allow onto my personal page. I don't want that to happen again. But what happened also when I wrote about voyeurism, and I wrote about being a pedophile and a bunch of other topics within that same kind of overall topic, someone who's a friend of mine now, at that time was just a brand new member to the group, sent me a personal note and said, but what are your thoughts on someone having to be a registered sex offender when in reality, all it was that he was like 19 and he was dating a 16-year-old or something like that. And the parents got upset and turned him in. So for the rest of his life, he has to register as a sex offender. It was a consensual relationship and everything. And it really got me thinking, right? I mean, the law is, as you know, Jean, like sometimes you've got to have this black and white, like he needs to be, this needs to be outlined and he needs to have that. But then there are some states who have different sex registry guidelines. So for a long time, he didn't have to say anything. And then some new state that he moved to, one of the neighbors found out and went around and told all the other neighbors. And this is a person who doesn't live that kind of life of being, you know what I mean, a predator, but yet there's the predator that I, turned in. And so how do you put them in the same category? And so these are the types of things that it's really opened up my eyes to not be so. I'm definitely not as judgmental as I used to be. I've always been a little open-minded, but this has made me more open-minded. And but yeah, so that's it.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah, I can talk. I can talk and talk. That's why running a group where you can talk is it's really good.
Well, I just want to clarify a couple things in case anyone is not familiar with the group, but I want to acknowledge a couple people that said hello. Hi, Heidi King. Hello, JR. No, I don't think we've met. What was I going to say? Oh, the specifics about the group. When you mentioned having these conversations, my first question is it a private group or a public group? And then also, are these conversations just typed conversations on the Facebook page? Or is it like a Zoom or a Facebook Live? How do you have the conversations?
Oh gosh, I'm so glad you asked me to clarify that. So it is a group where I post and then people can write back. You do have the ability to post, and then if I approve it, then it'll go live. But I've had some really inappropriate things come through, so I don't approve a lot of them. But there's also the actual Zoom talks, and soon I'll be resuming in person, but I will leave the virtual piece as part of it. So I do hybrid events with my event business. So I will include that model with the talks going forward as well. So those talks were happening sometimes every week, but with a lot of just changes in my own life, I've kind of slowed down. But I'm in conversation with lots of business owners about different topics that can be addressed, like trauma or hypnosis or lots of things. So the talks are almost always with a co-host. And the co-host will be someone like yourself, a small business owner or owner of a firm, or sometimes even people that work in corporate America that have a specific topic they want to address. But then we promote their business throughout, the advertisements for it and everything. But during the actual Zoom event, it's not a presentation. Like you don't go through a slideshow and just sit there. It's not a webinar. It's an actual live discussion, and there's no preset agenda. It's an organic conversation, very much like our talk right now, where we don't meet in advance and discuss what we're going to talk about. There may be an overall idea of what it might be. And then I will have some backup questions as prompts in case it doesn't organically flow. But a lot of times it'll end up taking, it'll take the direction that it's meant to. Like the people that are meant to join and the conversation, it just happens as it should be, right? So being able to talk about whatever said topic is. I think you joined the religion conversation, and I've had some others where everybody has very different backgrounds, but they can either listen in or they can join. I don't really, like I said, I don't think any one of my talks has been similar. Like they're all different. They're all their own thing. And again, I'm always really open to talking to people about different ideas that they have. So I would love it for those that are listening. If there's something, that they've always wanted to have others chime in on, like I said, menopause was one of perimenopause was one of the main things. I just don't think that it's right that people don't talk about it ever. And how are you supposed to learn and understand what's going on?
That is true. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And I'm gonna get to this in a second, but I see there's more people joining. So you guys that are joining in, let me know that you're here. Say hi. Tell me where you're joining in from, because I just see that there's people, but I don't know who you are through StreamYard. So if you guys have any specific ideas for taboo topics, like be creative, throw them out here, or ask questions, see if Laden's dealt with that topic before. But I mean, you mentioned something like menopause. Like if you ask me, what taboo topic should we talk about? What's going to come to my mind is the really taboo stuff,
Mm-hmm.
religion, sex, politics. I wouldn't think menopause, So what are some other, taboo things that, because when you were describing it to me, I thought to myself, what is it that I don't talk about unless somebody else brings up? Like it's not coming to mind. Like but once you say it, I'll probably be like, oh yeah, that's true. I don't,
Yeah.
what are some things that people generally don't like
Well,
to
let,
talk
let
about?
me, well, some of the really, really ridiculous things are, ridiculous, I'm saying, like really taboo. For example, like we've discussed anal sex, we've discussed threesomes and, things like that, right? Porn, if you're into watching porn, like people will mostly behave. There are times where the it's just hard. Sometimes you'll get some inappropriate comments. And what's really nice is most times people don't take offense. They're slightly inappropriate, but if something's getting out of hand, I'm the only moderator, but I have a community that's policing also. So they will send me a note and say, I'm really not okay with this conversation. So one topic that surprised me was a post someone else had suggested. And I thought it was a really good question. So why not post it to everyone? And it was, have you ever seen like a younger person that I think she clarified that it was, like a senior in high school. We're not talking like a 10-year-old child, and thought that the person was attractive. And it wasn't about doing anything with them. It was just merely asking if you've ever kind of, seen a good looking 17-year-old and thought, oh, that person's good looking, but you're not going to go do anything about it. It's just a thought. That actually triggered some massive feelings in a few of my members that were actually really active, and they left the group and were very like upset that I had something that basically was making being a pedophile okay. And that conversation was interesting because you're not acting on it, and it's truly just a quick thought in your mind, not anything else. You're not going to go and so those are the times where I'm like, I didn't expect that to be a, crossing the line type of taboo. And I recently changed the wording of my group because for a long time I felt like nothing was off the table. Like I could talk about anything and that I'd be open to talk about anything. But when the group hit 1,000 members, it began, I guess Facebook changes things, and it started getting a lot more like people interested in lots of kinky things. And they've, pointed that out to me, some of the things they want to talk about. And again, most things I'm okay with. But I've had about 8 people ask me to discuss incest. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't post on the group for a while because I didn't know what to do. Like I just became kind of, I didn't like the whole flight or fight kind of feeling. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm open to everything, but I didn't want to bring up that topic. And so I changed the language that almost anything can be discussed, because that one will trigger some intense emotions that honestly, I'm not a professional. And I didn't want to open myself up to pissing off a lot of members of the group. So I've thought about creating subgroups of the, and having discussions that if people want to discuss divorce, or if people want to discuss smoking marijuana, which is a fun topic to bring up. And then I thought that I would create one for incest and have those people that really want to talk about it and connect with others have a place. And then I said, no, I don't want my name tied to that. I don't want, and again, that's going right to the point of like why this group is necessary. It's because people don't talk about these taboo things, but some things need to be taboo. I can't get past it. So I'm not, yeah, I have to say, because I think some of them have traumatized me by sending me private messages with comments that are just not okay. And so I've had to block lots of people. I've gotten much better about having boundaries. But I don't know if my group members will appreciate having to go from a fun Facebook group and a group that teaches them about things to going to something that will make them call their therapist or something like that.
Yeah. Well, oh, I'm hearing an echo.
Is there an echo?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I hear an echo, but that's okay. I hate the sound of my voice. I'll ignore it. Yeah, I get it. I mean, the point is taboo topics, but from what you're saying, the way that I'm understanding it is you're not advocating for one particular position. You're just talking about something. And you said that, everybody else respects everyone's views. So you're not saying this topic is good and we should smoke marijuana or we shouldn't smoke marijuana. You're just talking about the topic of smoking marijuana. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct. I will chime in sometimes on my own things that I believe in, right? But I try to be careful about it. The one topic that I now don't talk about much is politics, because with that one, it was impossible to get people to stop being so in what their own thoughts were. So lots of people were mad at me because I did have my point of view was kind of strong on certain things, and so we will discuss politics, but not the same way. I don't want to have people debating about
Mm-hmm.
certain things. So because it's not a political group. If it was that, then I would just keep talking about it. But um, because facts are important to me and educating, was a lot of emotional stuff when it came to politics. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, I think that that's the key thing, is for me to keep my own like polarizing views out of it, because I don't want people to put the topic as a negative opinion of what I stand for, right? So for some things, and I have friends and family on that, so there's certain things that, like, how old were you when you lost your virginity kind of questions, or how many sex partners have you had, that question. I'm not going to answer, just because a lot of people, and it is a private group, so a lot of people are afraid people are going to see it, but that would mean that like 1,300 people know my business, that half of them know me. And that's a little different than posting that about yourself on a group which is mostly strangers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Send me a private message and I'll let you know those details, but not in front of everyone.
Right. Yeah, Ladan, we can talk about that later. So you mentioned that you first started this because of your event planning business, which we can talk about for a moment, but dealing with end of life, celebrations. But I don't want to use the improper terms. But you had mentioned because people don't like talking about those issues. So when you say, I assume you mean they don't like talking about death, so they put off getting life insurance and getting a will and planning a funeral and all that stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. It's what the group originally came out of was, there's an organization called Death Cafe, and it was started in 2003, I think, by this gentleman in England. And it was a way to have conversations about death and dying, but it wasn't a bereavement group. Sadly, he himself died at a pretty young age, 40 something, I think. And then his sister and mom made the group a nonprofit. And so I went to a death cafe in Sterling in one of the libraries, and I had intended to create a death cafe in Reston for people to come and kind of follow the model that this nonprofit has. And when I went to the Sterling event, at the very end, I discussed why I came, because that was the question. And I indicated that I was there due to my business that helps people with planning celebration of life events, that type of thing. So at the end, the lady running the meeting came to me and said, you're not allowed to talk about your business when you come to these events. And then I realized, oh, well, my whole idea of doing the rest in Death Cafe was to be able to bring in people to talk about green funerals and organ donation and all these things. So there's, again, an education component to it.
Mhm.
And I ended up realizing I couldn't have the Death Cafe model. So I was complaining about it to someone at a networking event, and she was a social media expert. And she said, you know, they don't own the concept of death and dying. Like you
Mhm.
don't have to be limited to doing Death Cafe. Call it Life Cafe or call it whatever you want to do. So I thought Life Cafe was actually a nice twist on things, but then the cafe in my gym is called Life Cafe. I'm like, this is going to be way too confusing. So it came to me in the middle of the night to call it Taboo Thursday, and that's the original name. And I was telling a friend that it came to me when I had a potty break in the middle of the night, and she said, "Oh, the think tank." So I thought that was so cute. But yeah, so like I mentioned, the original concept was to have a place that would kind of emulate what death cafes do, and be able to say like, oh, based on my belief system, I believe that there is an afterlife, or be able to just discuss the topic like of green funerals and cremation versus being buried, and what it means to be Muslim, and you have to be buried right away, and like all this stuff, right? So after two events that were really, really emotional and beautiful, we laughed and we talked about death. We got sad and cried together. That's when I realized I want to have more of these conversations, but I want to have that same impactful talk about, again, domestic violence or grieving the loss of your pet. A lot of people don't really deep dive into just how difficult it is to lose, a pet. And sometimes the way people just like, oh, just get another dog or just get another cat. Like
Mhm.
there's
Yeah,
not the
it's not
same
like
level.
replacing like something that, is broken in your apartment. It's like a family member.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is, I'm going through a divorce, and grieving the loss of what your future was supposed to be is grief. Right. And a lot of times I didn't look at those things before now addressing things like that, or talking about infertility and endometriosis and things that all these people are going through, and like rare diseases. We've talked about so many things that, again, it's it's not wrong to talk about these things, but people don't like to bring it up, because also people don't know how to react.
That's really true. I mean, I didn't think about infertility and being a taboo topic, but now that you mention it, I can see. And I actually thought of three ideas while you were talking. Have Well, this is a question.
Mhm.
Have Anytime during COVID, was there any sort of like COVID or vaccine related taboo talk?
Yes, we've
There was? Oh,
addressed
I
that.
missed that one.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, there was I want to say one of my friends was going to visit her family, and her sister wasn't vaccinated. So there was a conversation about just how to handle that, right? And so yeah, a lot of people talking about their emotions regarding like how they feel when they find out that someone is not willing to take care of society as a whole, or worry about whatever. But then there's the other side, which I also understand, like, don't tell me what I can do or not do with my body. It's my choice, right?
Mhm.
So again, lots of things that I previously might have had a thought, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, now this person's made me think about it differently. And so I'm hopeful that that's happening for members, that they're not just going in with a closed mind, that they're going in and saying, let me see. I'm sorry, I got distracted because I had another thought. If transgender people should be allowed to be in sports, like different sport things. That was a huge topic, and people going back and forth, like it might be okay in high school sports to let someone who was born male compete on the, against other girls, or um, and then, but at the Olympic level, it's not okay. And then why isn't it okay? And like people going back and forth. And a lot of times the topics come from what's in the news and just
Mhm,
putting it
mhm,
out there. So,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an example of something that you would everybody knows is can be considered a taboo topic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
things like, infertility and menopause, I or thought that those would be taboo topics.
I never thought that discussing the fact that I wanted to have a period party for my daughter because she got her first period, and that I wanted to discuss period traditions around the world, right? I use the word when a girl gets her period, and never anticipated being told that I was wrong about using that, because transgender boys are, maybe born female and they get their period too. And here's a boy with the period, getting the period, their period, and that was something I needed to be educated on. I didn't realize that I shouldn't say when a girl gets her first period. And then it was such a momentous occasion, and so excited about my daughter that I wanted to have a party for her. And it was going to be a welcome to womenhood, kind of like welcome to the tribe, right? Kind of party. And I didn't do it because I didn't realize that there are transgender kiddos out there that are sad that they got their period. And well, I mean, everyone should be sad because it sucks, but I'm just teasing. Just joking. But that's a difficult topic for the parents too, because they're dealing with, not only is this cramps and horrible thing every month, but it's a reminder that they're not, biologically, they were not born male. They're still dealing with female issues. And then, so sex social constructs, like the, gender social constructs, was an interesting conversation, because I ran that with my daughter, who is now 17, but she ran it with me when she was 16. And I had a transgender individual on that conversation, and with younger folks that were not being supported by their parents. And um, there were tears, people thrilled to be able to talk to an older person going through the transition. And but a lot of the conversation had to do with how some of us that are Gen X don't necessarily have an easy time with the whole they them changing pronouns, and like, and then us older folks on the call asking for some grace and understanding from the younger folks, that this might be easy for you to say they them, and change pronouns easily, and do all of that, but for us it's taking some time. So just give us grace, we're really trying. And so, like, again, not should not be taboo to discuss and support um, our differences, and different, people in this world that are LGBTQ plus or anything else. Like, it should be, but it takes some work to get people to do that, and be open. So
You say it shouldn't be taboo, but
it
I
is right now,
I mean, we
sadly.
can say that about a lot of these taboo topics that you talk
Yeah.
about, because
Yep.
that's why you talk about them.
Yep.
So, but I actually, I have a question. So I I don't know how to articulate this. I would think that most people who would join a taboo conversation, any taboo topic conversation that you're hosting, um, wouldn't be diametrically opposed to it, if it was some sort of political or hot button issue. Have you ever had anybody in a group that I don't want to use the word volatile, but has it ever gotten kind of like out of control, like people getting angry or because of their viewpoints or because of something that came up? Okay, you're indicating yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Politics caused, my God, it was bad. I've never seen anything like it where when there was our last leader really polarized people and the opinions were very strong. And so I had very angry comments. Yeah. So yes, it can get pretty bad. Um,
So there were people on both sides of the political spectrum in that conversation?
yes, on both sides misbehaving.
Okay. Okay.
When you bring passion into it and it can no longer be about just wanting to have a conversation and it becomes about like feelings and also like maybe misinformation and then people just wanting to call each other stupid and being like ridiculous, right? So like people actually attacking the person instead of attacking the concept or you know what I mean? Like you're an idiot, so and so is not
Mhm.
okay. You can't talk like that, right? And so yes, that's why I really do try and stay away from politics because I just don't want the members fighting. But I mean, we do have some political, like I'm not opposed to having certain conversations, but with
Mm.
that particular time period where it was so polarizing, I lost friends. Like they actually unfriended me on Facebook as well. Definitely had people leave the group because um, they didn't enjoy that piece of the discussion. So,
What was the topic?
oh gosh, I mean, it was mostly about things with Trump. I mean, I
Well, I
don't
mean, I
really
figured, but
remember.
like, I mean, it wasn't the topic wasn't anti-Trump. Like, what was the what was the topic of the conversation?
Oh gosh, I blanked out. I don't
Was it
remember.
like a maybe COVID related or something? I don't know. I don't
No,
know.
I don't think it was COVID. Gosh, I don't remember right now, but yeah, you definitely I don't usually delete old posts, so you would always be able to look. But but yes, I do know also that like I said, the polarizing nature of how I felt about things too. There could be things that I was posting that were already coming from so like I might post something from a more liberal organization, but then there were times where I would post from things that were a little bit more conservative and like people would attack me and be like, "Well, do you know what this newspaper even is? This is a XYZ run by so and so." And like so almost like I was the troublemaker for posting things that were, but the media at that point was so biased and polarizing also that so a lot of it was just, well, what do you mean? I saw this about this fact, and like, what do you mean you saw that? And so some of it was just the fact that we're all getting news from different sources, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
having those kind of conversations too, and it's not just one party that sticks to what they learn. Both of them. It was just, and that's what made it, I think, so difficult, right? It's
Mhm.
generally the topic like, even with abortion, like there's definitely people in the group that don't agree with it, but they didn't disparage or say anything awful to the people that were opening up about their abortions, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that people respect and whatever. But then, like conversations about whether or not, like, some people choose not to have kids, right? So these are like things that should be, and there are a lot of those things that people do understand that everyone's going to have different opinions, but um, that definitely a lot of times when people can't debate anymore, they just resort to being mean to one another. So
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And I mean, you see, and everybody who's listening to this and watching it, you can see it just on your own Facebook page. I mean, like you can post something totally innocuous or not innocuous, but someone will, attack you for whatever it is, because no matter what you do, like you can't
mhm,
please everybody, and someone's going to be upset about something. And so
that's right.
from behind the computer, they're bullying people for all sorts of different things. Sometimes sometimes based on reality, sometimes based on things that aren't not true at all.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so yeah, it's so you guys can. I bring that up because I'm sure we've all seen it. Even if we don't post things like that on Facebook, you see the comments that show up on your newsfeed from other people's pages, and how out of control people can get and argue about what I think are the silliest things online. But
Yep.
then when you throw into the mix like topics like that,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I just want to share one last thing with you. So hopefully the people listening in will want to find out more information. I'm having an event showcase to kind of outline what I can do for clients with my Leave It to Me event management company, and it's called New Beginnings, but it's called New Beginnings because it's essentially my divorce party, right? And so I have a bunch of different things happening, and I've never had this before where I have advertised an event that I'm doing that has had people actually be like opposed to the theme of my party. So I've had 3 people now just say kind of like, good luck with your party, but this isn't the kind of party I'm interested in attending. Right. And so I'm thinking, what? And so this came to me that when I first started talking about death and dying, I read a thing where it said, just like talking about sex doesn't make you pregnant, talking about death doesn't make you dead. I've now added to it that by going to a divorce party, it's not going to make your marriage fall apart. Like it's not contagious. So I feel like some of these married, happily married people are opposed to my party because I'm celebrating my divorce. It doesn't mean that I don't love the institution of marriage and that I don't want them to be happily married. But I do believe you can celebrate everything. You can celebrate a wedding and you can celebrate the end of a marriage. And so my new thing is now like I'm just gonna like maybe even have something at the party that says, "Don't worry, divorce isn't contagious." You know, so it's like it's not like the COVID. There is no mask we need to wear. I'm not gonna pass on my happiness about the end of my marriage and make you go home and be like, "Oh shucks, I guess I need to get divorced now." You know, like it's not going to be like that. So anyway, I just had to share that because I actually, because of my what I do, I actually wrote back to those people and asked, like, "What is it about this party that makes you uncomfortable?" And I was hoping to have a dialogue, and it did not happen. But that's okay. It takes some courage to actually talk about some of these things. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm hopeful that I'm helping people be courageous to have those difficult conversations because if you can practice it on the page, you can then maybe implement that in your real life. Not that the
Mhm.
page isn't real life, I guess, but you
Yeah.
get some practice, just like it's given me some practice to set better boundaries and to be okay with certain things that I didn't used to be.
Mhm.
But thank you, Jean, for having me on.
Yes, of course. And put into the comments the information about the party. Are tickets still available?
Yes, so it's a hybrid event because I specialize that because of COVID. So there will be lots of folks joining on Zoom, and then the in-person event takes place at Rowan Tree, which is my co-working space, which is fabulous. And there'll be a DJ and karaoke and some fake gambling and some vendors. And the highlight, the end of the evening portion is a dominatrix friend of mine is actually going to talk about what it means to be a dominatrix and how she got into that. So
Interesting.
I
I
think
will be
that's,
at the
yeah.
party.
I know you're going to be there. I'm excited.
I'm
And
excited
people
too.
should bring their friends, right? And especially if they know someone who has a need to celebrate. Maybe they've just decided to leave corporate America. They're becoming a small business owner. Maybe they've retired altogether or gotten their last period. We should celebrate it.
Mhm. That's a good point. It's not just divorce. It's celebrating change, right?
Celebrating everything, all new beginnings. Yep.
Exactly. So I actually got several ideas for taboo topics, but I will message you privately
Yay.
on
Oh,
it.
please, yes. I'm
Um,
I'm trying to find the link, but can I put it in the recording area? It doesn't have to be put in this now, right?
No, you don't have to put it in StreamYard. We can put
Okay,
it.
perfect.
The recording's still going to be on Facebook, so you can. That's never going to go away. Nothing on Facebook
Oh
ever goes away.
boy.
So you can put the link in there, and you guys can check that out. I will be at the party, and I am looking forward to it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you, Ladan, about more of these
Yay.
topics. I got so many ideas, like
That's
things that I don't
fantastic.
talk to people. Like I just thought of all these things when we were talking. You're like, I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't talk about this. I don't talk about this. I don't talk about this because I don't want anyone to get mad at me or think, whatever. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank
so
you
Ladan,
again.
hang tight. When I end the broadcast, you and I can still be here. But to everybody who's watching, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And this was actually a really great conversation. I really enjoyed this. We had an entire talk about taboo talks. So
Yay.
you guys,
I'll post this to the group too.
yes, you guys, check out the Taboo Talks and Thoughts. Laden will put in the comments links to everything that she wants you guys to check out. And then tune in 2 weeks on March 16th. I will have Tom Payne from Mr. Handyman as my guest. Oh, Heidi said thank you both. Thank you, Heidi, for joining us. And yeah, if you guys have any taboo ideas, because almost everything is on the table, so almost. So throw it out to Laden. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.